What is your understanding of the conflict? Do you see the possibility of having, a nuclear war or attacking Iran by nukes?
Well, I certainly hope not, but you can't rule this out. I mean, there are two factors operating here. One is the slow erosion of the so-called nuclear allergy. That is the recognition that the use of nuclear weapons again, of course the United States is the only country ever to have used them against the civilian population. There are efforts being made to downgrade the significance of that. People saying, well, the firebombing of Tokyo killed a lot more people than Hiroshima and Nagasaki did. Maybe that's true. That's not the point. Those are relatively low-yield, initially developed nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons today are vastly more destructive. So what would be the target in Iran? You could make a case for a nuclear targeting of a nuclear facility that is deep underground, on the theory that the only way you could destroy that facility would be with a nuclear strike. But if you do that, you cross the barrier into the use of nuclear weapons as a routine tool of war. And that opens Pandora's box. Of course, there are those who speculate that Iran has in fact produced a nuclear weapon. I doubt that. But if you attacked Iran with nuclear weapons and it did have a nuclear weapon, you can be sure it will respond. And so I think the other factor here, aside from the erosion of the nuclear allergy and the tendency now in the military, I think, very foolishly to talk about low-yield tactical nuclear use of nuclear weapons. This is deplorable. They've actually developed some systems where you can dial down or dial up the explosive power of a submarine-launched missile. Anyway, the other factor here is the madness of Donald Trump. He is clearly unstable mentally, and he has shown a appallingly bad judgment on military matters. And he started this war, which is destroying his presidency and menacing the global economy, done huge damage in Iran, significant damage to American protected states in the Persian Gulf, great damage to Israel, much more than they've admitted, and with the prospect of further damage. His judgment is poor, and that is very clear. Could he make a decision to... I don't think he could. Attack on the United States. Capable of striking menace did not exist before the inept diplomacy of a series of American administrations, beginning with the Clinton administration, of which I was part, which simply didn't understand the Korean issue and previous dialogue with the North Koreans in the George H.W. Bush administration. So there is reason to be worried. And let's also note that Israel is a nuclear power, and it has a record of savagery and indifference to mass slaughter that is completely well documented and, in fact, being demonstrated as we speak. When you talked about Israel having no boundaries on its behavior, you did not mention the West Bank. And there is a full-scale pogrom program supported by the Israeli Defense Forces to drive Palestinians from their homes, to seal off corridors of contact between the enclaves that have been left to the Palestinians, and basically to accomplish the purpose of Zionism, which is to evict everyone who isn't Jewish from Palestine. This is not a good moment. There's a lot of irrationality going on, and I don't think you can rule out the use of nuclear weapons. And by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't the only one hearing this. Larry Johnson's hearing it too, and other people with ties to the Pentagon are aware of it. And I don't know if you've got the two Larrys on later today, but I'm sure they have something to say about this.
No.
Oh wait, it's grapevine and shit.
The point of putting pressure on Iran and forcing them by economic and financial pressure is not. This is not something new. The Trump administration did the same in his first administration in 2018, withdrawing from JCPOA and putting tremendous pressure on Iranians. In those days, Europeans decided not to be part of the game,
justice,
but they stayed aside and
justice, and truth. Let it set you free.
And coming 2026, what has changed? For example, yesterday we learned China
We're going to continue. What that?
launch economic warfare on Iran, and its trading partners wouldn't work. They said they're not going to be part of this. They're not going to obey, participate, cooperate.
All right, so we are on page 4. We're reading from Scandinavian and Slavonic literature. Alexa, play some upbeat classical reading music. It's book number 10 of the Columbia University series. We started a full read on it yesterday. All right, the social background, bottom of page 4 is where we're at. Oh, it's a beautiful morning. The sun and the UV is perfect. Nice light breeze. Denmark, with its broad plains and its infusion of non-Teutonic blood, might be considered as the Scandinavian South. The people have the gaiety, the genial lightheartedness, and graceful sociability of true Southerners. Whether they be in the Ukraine or south of the Mason and Dixon line. In the illuminating book by Dr. Leach, which I have already mentioned, the author draws with great care and subtlety the composite portrait of each of the 3 Scandinavian peoples. He speaks of the thrifty, humorous, friendly Danes and representing man in relation to his fellow men. The Swedes, with their courtly ways, fundamental imaginativeness, fervent idealism, and above all, their surpassing love of nature, symbolize man in relation to nature. While the extreme northern type, the Norwegians, a people of intense and underlying sentiment and subjectivity, stand for man in relation to his ideals. The terms of these descriptions are helpful and suggestive. They are not intended to be accurate, nor do they imply the exclusive possession of certain traits by one or another branch of the Scandinavian people. But the Scandinavians have certain pronounced racial characteristics. The spirit of self-reliance, the love of individual liberty, and the grim determination to lay wide and firm the basis of human freedom. This is the temper of the North. These people combine passionate devotion to personal liberty with an intelligent willingness to join others for social ends. Steady, practical, self-reliant, rational, they can be masters in the world of affairs, and yet they have never surrendered their primitive right to live in the realms of fancy, to follow the gleam of the ideal, or to dream great dreams. Nor have they lost the pagan joy in nature, that mystic and instinctive accord with the beauties that the gods have scattered among them. The trait most distinctively Scandinavian, however, is that of self-dependence, a reliance upon individual initiative. The words of Isben in the following passage from An Enemy of the People ring true of the Norwegian temperament. Yes, an evil can still lurk amongst those who wear the cloaks or play the roles. Come on, chauvinistics. Yes, it's good to not be too naive and just think that because someone is of a certain religion, race, nationality, or wears a certain cloak, or holds a certain occupation, that they should be trusted. That's stupid and naive. But you should know how to respect and recognize too, right? I mean, it's really simple things. Were you never taught? The most beautiful man in the world is the man who is the most alone. No man today masters himself or helps others to self-mastery who cannot contrive to make a Norway for himself in this busy, chattering world. It is refreshing as a salt bath to learn that the Viking spirit of independence and personal responsibility is still so much alive anywhere. It is because of this instinctive regard for the individual that the Scandinavians, as a people, have always treated their women as social equals. In the Orient, women were the property of men, but the Viking women belonged to themselves and had a voice in all things, and today the people of the North at foremost in their recognition of the social and political rights of women. This is the hallmark of a developed stage of civilization. In Norway, women early attained full suffrage. In Sweden and Denmark, women voted at first in all country affairs.
There's nothing like my
Alexa, Volume 1. The war alone delaying the granting of parliamentary suffrage. But it is in social legislation that the Scandinavians have given women the fullest measures of justice. Motherhood has been fully protected. This attitude towards women has not been without its effect on literature. In play after play, Isbjørn Bjørnson and others preach women's right to individual liberty, and among the most illustrious writers of Sweden are Fredrika Bremer, Selma Lagerlöf, a recipient of the Nobel Prize for Literature, and Ellen Key. These are but a few of the women writers of the North. The final mark that tells a nation's progress in civilization is its type of social legislation. Alexa, Volume 4. In the Scandinavian countries, there is not only a comparatively wide distribution of wealth, but social legislation has attained a high degree of forethought and balanced justice. Social reforms are not imposed from above the interest of a paramount state. In the North, especially in Denmark, there is voluntary cooperation and a gratifying measure of political and industrial independence. Above all, there is that growth and development of social coherence, directed by intelligence, that will bring civilization at last, shaped and ordered, out of chaos and anarchy. Politically, the three countries are limited, democratic monarchies, so that the radical parties are concerned with social programs rather than the political issues. Hello, good morning.
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Oh wow, the UV is so bright.
Yes.
It is 8:33 here. I know after looking at the sun, it takes a second to be able to see those small numbers.
Scandinavian literature, we're on page 6. Our survey of the geopolitical, social, and political background, together with the brief summary we have just completed of the national traits of character, will throw some light upon the development of Scandinavian literature. The deep wells from which the writers of the North draw their inspiration are not the alien sources of classical mythology or the religious mysticism of the distant East. The literature of Scandinavia has its roots in the native Eddas, Eddas, Eddas and sagas discussed in the volume on medieval literature. Eddas! Eddas! I guess you had to be there. To this very day, the pagan imagery of the ancient Norse is echoed in the writings of modern poets, novelists, and dramatists, in spite of their preoccupation with social problems and their responsiveness to every wind of European doctrine. Hello. In one of his poems, Björnson writes, "Over the mountain tops glowing, light king his armies are throwing." Light king, L-I-G-H-T. Over the mountain tops glowing, light king his armies are glowing. This personification is typical of the poetic imagery of the North. The sagas of Eddas have exercised the profoundest influence upon the whole course of Scandinavian literature. The stirring incidents they relate in brief, biting phrases, their keen grasp of character, grim humor, manly simplicity, passionate love of action, and graphic brevity have modeled the style and manner of Northern literature. These heroic tales have furnished themes for the great dramatists of the North. They have been more than literary raw material. They have kindled and inspired creative effort and aroused creative spirit. All truly Scandinavian writings, whether in prose or in verse, are marked by the pithy brevity, directness, naturalness, and vividness of the Eddas and sagas. The latter are, in essential things, similar to the Scandinavian folk tales. Like the folk stories, the sagas were intended for oral recitation, and the two are a truly individual form of art. In a few happy sentences, Björnson gives the chief qualities of the folklore of the North. How happy in its manly equipoise, word of the day, equipoise, equipoise. How happy in its manly equipoise in the Norwegian folklore, in spite of startling peculiarities. Hello. Good morning to you. Some of these stories take us into the dense forest among mocking echoes from the life outside. In some, we feel human souls hovering homeless above the reefs. In others, memories of an always sunlit land flit before us. Flit before us. F-L-I-T. Flit before us. But in none do we meet with sentimentalism, despondency, disconsolateness. But in none do we meet with sentimentalism, despondency, discondolences. The essential aspects of the folk tales are the distinguishing characteristics of Scandinavian literature. The literature of the North is marked by native dramatic power, a delight in action, swift, pithy dialogue, and vivid analysis of character. I have already spoken of the Scandinavian love for nature. It is this delight in all of nature's phenomenon, coupled with the inherent dramatic character of the Northern imagination, that accounts for the personification of nature that one finds throughout all Scandinavian literature. Bjornson describes this natural mysticism as the power to put the figure in the landscape and the landscape in the figure. I like that. It is this delight in all of nature's phenomenon, coupled with the inherent dramatic character of the Northern imagination, that accounts for the personification of nature that one finds throughout all Scandinavian literature. Bjornson describes this natural mysticism as the power to put the figure in the landscape and the landscape in the figure. Like a marble, sure. In Scandinavian literature, from the very beginning, the forces and phenomenon of nature were dramatized. They had voices and they spoke. Read Andersen's fairy tales, Bjornson's outdoor poems, his introduction to the novel, Arnie, Selma Lagerlöf's stories of the Swedish forest of Varmland, and you will find Varmland, Varmland, and you will find that everything speaks: the mountains, the trees, the winds, the animals, household things. Even a darning needle can make pointed remarks. So that the Scandinavians do not love action for its own sake. They delight in the dramatic unfolding of character and personality through action. This attempt to illuminate action, to view it as the expression of inner and essential qualities, gives Scandinavian literature a reflective spirit. Hamlet, the Brooding Dane, and Ibsen's Skull are as truly Scandinavian as in Häcken, the kingly man of action. And the contrast between Bjornson and Ibsen gives the two sides of the Norwegian character. The former, a man of action, sunny, genial, confident, victorious. The latter, a brooding, reflective spirit, plagued by doubts and questions of the soul. In Scandinavian literature, there is, on the one hand, native frankness, simple candor, absence of self-consciousness, and, on the other hand, there is the stern knowledge of the inner self, the consciousness that made Ibsen say, "What is life? A fighting in heart and in brain with trolls? Poetry? That means writing doomsday accounts of our souls?" The influence of the folktale has determined the form of the Scandinavian novel. In Northern literature, one does not find huge misshapen works like Dostoevsky's Brothers Karamazov, nor are there many novels with closely knit plots like Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. The typical Scandinavian novel consists of a series of episodes, each complete in itself, sometimes the narration of an action, but quite often merely a reflective soliloquy. Alexa, Volume 1, put that on the list.
Shop for everyday items.
Alexa, volume 1. That can go on with the word of the day too. A reflective soliloquy. 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 A reflective soliloquy. Thank you. Or a dramatic dialogue. Selma Lagerlof's Gosta Berlin's Saga and Lilla Krona's Home, Lilencronas. Look that one up. I have not read it. Lilian Krona's Home. Lilian Krona's Home. Bornson's Arning and The Fisher Maiden are novels of this sort. The Fisher Maiden sounds interesting. Even the long 8-volume novels of Nexo, Peli, and Conqueror, the Pontoppidan, like Per, show many of the distinctive features of Scandinavian fiction. Alexa, Volume 4. The later literature of the Scandinavian countries, in which might be included the writings since 1865, is marked by a more cosmopolitan tone. The milieu remains Scandinavian, but the themes of the best work are universal. It was Brandes, the great Danish critic, who inspired the younger generation to attempt fresh fields and pastures new. He taught that in the art one must not imitate, but create. He wished to re-wed art to life, to the visible reality of the artist's own day and generation, to free the writer from the trammels of traditional themes and methods, so that free individuality might come into play once more. In his lectures and critical work, Brandes led the young... Thank you, I got this at Walmart in 1995. I don't know what brand it is. I did look at it at one point, but I forgot. I'll tell you later. Nice try, though. I almost fell for that. Oh no, I lost my spot. Oh, it was Brandes, the great Dutch critic, who inspired the younger generation to attempt fresh fields and pastures new. He taught that in art one must not imitate, but create. He wished to re-wed art to life, to the visible reality of the artist's own day and generation, to free the writer from the trammels of tradition, themes, and methods, so that free individuality might come into play once more. In his lectures and critical work, Brandes led the young artists of the North to see the problems of their own day. He pointed the way to new materials of thought and to a new psychology and style. And this way, literature came to grapple. It came to grapple anew with life. Schools were formed, realists, naturalists, symbolists. All of the militants grouped themselves around Brandes and Brandes, and looked to him to blaze the trail for them, to set forth clearly all the aesthetic and political forces of the day and the literary currents that flowed in every direction. But the Scandinavians could not be content with literary realism and the scientific teachings of evolution and philosophical doctrines of freedom and reason. There soon sprang up a group of young literatures who found fresh inspiration in the pantheistic and a pantheistic outlook upon life, Pantheistic. Put that on the list too. Pantheistic outlook upon life. And an inner spiritual understanding of all the gathered force of life. And in the discovery of the indestructible concord with the universal spirit. You try to make the teacher laugh. Indeed. There is a new mysticism, not alone the pagan personification of nature's forces, but the modern consciousness that all the phenomenon of life are manifestations of one force. All appearances, a real unity in a manifold diversity. But the literature of the North will never lose its character of free humanity, its individual note and tendency. In their East, there is the search for liberty and the faith that one can find freedom in the loss of self. Among the Scandinavians, there is the assertion of self, and yet the ready recognition of others and the voluntary wish to unite with them. The great writers of modern Scandinavia, Ibsen, Bordsen, Strindberg, Hampson, have struck mighty blows in their desire to beat into shape the distorted ethics of the world. Some say that from Russia there will come the final word of deliverance, but others believe that the East will awaken from its lethargy only in response to the beating of the hammer of Thor. Louis S. Freeland. And then on page 9 you have a timeline of, it's a chronology of important events in Norway. You're welcome. Yes, we are doing a full read. You like that? It's Columbia University in Literature, Book 10. Scandinavian and Slavonic literature, you got me. Yes. All right, thank you. You're welcome. It is a really good book.
Now you could have a consultative relationship with Tehran. Not Tehran coming in as a member of this entente, but as a dialogue partner, as a coordinator. And that ought to scare the living daylights out of the Israelis, because that is an effective counter to their expansionism. Iran has shown the ability to maul Israel, and it can do it again. Turkey has that capability, but it has not demonstrated it. So this is a sign of the times. Capitals in the region, whether they're Riyadh or Damascus or, for that matter, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, are all pursuing their what they regard as their interests without regard to foreign advice. That is a declaration of independence for the region. And that is very important, and that is why I use the phrase West Asia to describe the region, not the Middle East, because the Middle East defines the region in terms of its relationship with, in that case, the United States. The Near East is a declaration defining the region in terms of its relationship to Europe. So now West Asia is a term defining the region in its own terms, as a thing in itself, and that is exactly what is emerging. And some people in the region don't like that, but tant pis, as they say in French, too bad. It's happening.
Ambassador, there is some